So I moved to the US from Canada 2 years ago. And when I moved here, I was really afraid of using the healthcare system. So I just avoided it as best I can. And I was pretty successful at this until I contracted a flesh-eating disease for toddlers. So here's the story of my inaugural experience with the US healthcare system. Buckle up. Before we begin though, 2 notes. First, the story's kind of gross. I'm going to show you a few pictures, but I'm not going to show you anything super gross. I don't want to freak you out. I just want you to know what this looks like in the early stages. So God forbid, if this should happen to you, you'll know kind of what to look for. Number 2, judging by how some of you react to the ketchup sandwiches that I post on Instagram, we may be working with different definitions of gross. Okay, why was I afraid of the healthcare system to begin with? I think a lot of it had to do with the friends I was making in the States. My first couple months here, I got close to a few people, and I'm bonding with one of them over a couple drinks, and they look me in the eye and they say, "You know, Chris, if anything ever happened to you, I would never call you an ambulance." And I was like, I think if something happened to you, I would probably call you an ambulance, and I would hope that you would do the same. And they were like, no, you do not want to get into an ambulance. It'll drive you into medical debt. I was like, okay, what do I do? And they were like, if you had all your limbs, we would walk. But if you weren't conscious, obviously I'd put you in an Uber. That's how I learned that in the US, ambulances are for your enemies that you want to drive into medical debt. I also got some other ominous warnings. Like a few people told me never go to urgent care. And whenever I asked what's urgent care, they'd say, it's a place you shouldn't go to. I've also had some friends here who have had procedures done and then they get unexpected medical bills for things that the insurance company initially said was covered. I really genuinely was afraid of getting into any trouble, and I just did not want to go to the doctor. So trouble started around September 14th, 2022. A year ago, I got a pimple on my lower face. Normally, I only get pimples up here or on my cheeks. I took note of it, I said hello to it in the mirror, and I went on my way. Until it started tingling, and I was like, pimples don't normally tingle. So I text a few of my friends and I say, I have this tingly pimple and I'm worried, and they all say, shut up, you're bragging about your skin. And I go, okay. And I take their advice and I just shut up. And I ignore it for about a week. And it starts getting really itchy, and it starts growing, and there's kind of like flaky skin on that spot. And then something happened that I really couldn't ignore. The hair on top of the spot started to fall out, which threatened to reverse the second great puberty of 2012 AD, before which I looked like a sock puppet, and after which I had the semblance of a chin. I hate to admit it, but really it was the loss of facial hair that made this a medical emergency for me. So I log into my insurance provider's website, I navigate through what feels like 10,000 menus, and I find that I can talk to a doctor nearly instantly online, but it turns out that I'm just kind of texting the doctor, and the doctor asks me for a pic, and I text him a pic, and he's kind of like, yikes, and then he just prescribes me a topical antibiotic. By this point, it's pretty late in the night, so all the pharmacies are closed, so I just figure I'll go to bed, and when I wake up, I'll go get this topical ointment, and we'll be done with it. By the time I woke up, things had gone south, like big time. It was super tingly, super itchy, there was pus kind of erupting from my face. It had spread to the other side of my face as well, and that was fine. The real problem was that my facial hair continued to fall out. I went through 2 puberties to develop this facial hair. I'm not doing it again. If I were in Canada, I would just go to a walk-in clinic. So I Google walk-in clinic, and what I find is that in the States, a walk-in clinic is called urgent care. And I'm like, shit, literally every single person who finds out I'm Canadian warns me, don't go to urgent care. This is urgent and I need care. So I walk over to the urgent care, and it seems a lot like a Canadian clinic with 2 major differences. First, the American clinics have a lot of technology that Canadian clinics don't have, like a TV that plays infomercials and also a credit card reader. Second, the clinic that I went to was open concept. It was open to the street because when I was sitting and waiting, somebody came by and smashed it in the window, and then they kind of shuffled us away from the glass. They didn't seem too bothered by it. I guess it's good for business if people are getting struck by glass. But anyway, I get called into a room, and there's a man sitting there by a computer, and he starts asking me questions. He says, what's wrong with you? He asks me some really invasive questions about my habits, and I notice that he's not wearing scrubs. So I go, are you my doctor? And he goes, no. Okay, are you a nurse? And he goes, no. And I go, who are you? And he just gets up and leaves. So I'm sitting there, and there's a TV playing infomercials in the waiting area, and I'm learning how to make a 7-layer dip. So then the doctor walks in, and she looks legit. She's wearing scrubs. She has absolutely no facial expression, and she gets really close to me and is just kind of like, And she goes, yeah, yeah. And she tells me that I have impetigo. And I say, that's cool. What's impetigo? And she says that it's a flesh infection for kids aged 2 to 6. And I was like, Doc, I'm 30. Are you sure? Why would I have a toddler flesh disease? And she goes, I don't know. And I'm like, well, how do you get it? And she goes, well, kids just kind of get it from being gross. And I was like, I'm not gross. I've never done anything gross. But then I was looking at my camera roll after, and I remembered that I had spent the few weeks prior to this infection playing on the streets of New York on the ground and also insisting on cheek kissing everybody that I met. So I was like, okay, Doc, we don't have much time here. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna get rid of this? And she goes, oh, we'll just do the nuclear option. And I was like,
Common side effects include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, decreased appetite, and indigestion. Some side effects can lead to dehydration.
The nuclear option? And she goes, yeah. And she writes me a script for 3 different antibiotics. And I'm like, I'm allergic to some antibiotics, but I can't remember which ones. And she goes, yeah, you probably grew out of that. I was like, why would I grow out of that, but not grow out of getting flesh-eating disease for toddlers? She told me it would be fine. So I start to leave the clinic when someone stops me and goes, whoa, buddy, where are you going? You haven't checked out. At the cash, I give them my insurance card and I'm like wincing. And the person goes, oh, you have really good insurance. And I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. That'll be $50. And I was like, $50? That's good. Anyway, so I paid and I went on my way. So the doctor had asked me which pharmacy I want the drugs to go to, and I just picked the one that was closest to me. So I walk over there and the pharmacist brings up my script and she starts going, ooh. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I got the nuclear option. I don't know what it is, but I know I have the nuclear option. And she was like, no, this is gonna be really expensive. And I was like, oh no, I have insurance. And I give her my insurance card. And she's like, no, we don't take your insurance here. If you want the drugs, you have to pay out of pocket. And I was like, okay, well, how much is it gonna be? Is it gonna be like $100? Because at this point I'm desperate. I'm ready to pay whatever they need. And she starts laughing at me and she goes, add a 0 and then multiply it by something. And I was like, the nuclear option is thousands of dollars, but I have insurance. How is this possible? And she goes, well, we're not in your insurance network. And I'm like, what's an insurance network? And she just starts laughing. Mind you, being Canadian is weird in situations like this because we sound American enough. We don't know how stuff works. So people just think that we're like aliens or like Kimmy Schmidt kind of people. So I'm like, who's in my network? And she goes, not this pharmacy, and shoos me out of the line. So I stumble onto the street and I just start walking into every pharmacy and asking them, are you in my network? None of them were. Like literally none of these pharmacies would take my insurance. And after about an hour and a half of begging pharmacies, I find this one pharmacy that's at the back of a store. They have like a handwritten sign that says pharmacy. And there's a person at the cash who's just completely dissociating. And I go, do you take my insurance? And without even really looking at me, she goes, mm-hmm. And she takes my card. And within 30 minutes, I have my prescriptions. And I'm about to walk out and she goes, you have to pay. And I'm like, but you said that you take my insurance. And she's like, yeah, we take your insurance, but you still have a copay. What the hell is a copay? And she goes, well, the insurance subsidizes it, but you still have a remaining balance. I'm like, okay, what's it gonna be? And she's like, $7. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. After what I've been through today, $7, I feel like kissing you. That's fine. I give her the money, and for the first time in like 24 hours, I unclench my butthole. And as I'm leaving, she goes, by the way, don't take those on an empty stomach. And I was like, okay, obviously not. I'm not an idiot. I walk outside. I immediately take them on an empty stomach. And within 15 minutes, I'm crying in line at Popeyes, trying to get the greasiest thing ever to weigh it down. But within 24 hours, I stopped being contagious. I started to feel better. And luckily, there's no scarring. The hair grew back. Sometimes there's a little bit of a faint pink mark that you can see, but for the most part, it's like nothing ever happened. I can laugh about it now, but really it was freaky at the time. Healthcare is no laughing matter. I'm gonna leave some resources in the description of this video, including if you're a low-income New Yorker, you may be eligible for low or no cost health insurance. I know when I was a grad student working part-time, this came in really, really handy and saved me. Until next time, wishing you well. Don't touch your face, don't be gross, don't be like me. See you soon, bye.